Should be live.
Alrighty, we are now live streaming. My name is James DeRofi. This is the March 2022 Old Farm District Neighborhood Association meeting. We do have a quorum present. I'm going to ask the board members that are here to introduce themselves, and then after that, I'm going to ask for Councilor Keebler to introduce herself as well. We are doing a new format in these meetings. These are test runs. Hopefully people like them. They are going to be shorter for the public to participate in, but that does not necessarily mean we don't want to hear from them. We're just trying to do more things behind the scenes so that we can accomplish more. So that being said, Dirk, why don't you introduce yourself?
My name is Dirk Benson. I joined the board, I don't know, 6-8 months ago, and I'm kind of the tech guy.
Brian Ross? Yeah.
Ross? Sure. Hi, I'm Ross Tinty, also kind of a recent board member about a year ago, and that ought to do. Happy to see everybody.
You're muted, Karen.
I'm Karen Johnson, the land use chair. I've been on the board for 5 or 6 years, a long time.
And I'm Brian Kennedy, also my first year on the board, and the liaison for the Bend Beautification Program.
And I guess that goes to Melanie at this point.
Yeah, Councilor Melanie Keebler here.
And for those of you that do not know, we have two other board members that are not present. Dave Johnson, who is having some medical issues, and Jennifer Sawyer, who is being a mother and a parent and attending the open house at Caldera, the new high school on 15th Street. So we've got an agenda set forward. If anybody has any questions from the audience at any time, please use the chat feature at the bottom of your screen to chime in. I was hoping Jim Christo would be on. I do not see him. So I'm going to start very briefly with we're going to be hosting an annual meeting at Alpenglow Park. We've decided on the day. We have not secured the time. That is going to be July 9th. It is a Saturday. We are hoping to, we need to get a little bit more information from Parks to address that. It is going to be a large gathering out in the public. We're going to invite as many nonprofits as we can find or are willing to come in the area. We're hoping to have some fun things from the city, like fire trucks and police officers and things like that. We're going to invite Councilor Keebler to come and basically stand up on the stage. We're hoping to have a radio remote, food trucks, and depending on logistics, this will hopefully be at least one small area of beverages allowed, adult beverages, so that parents can come and relax, have a good time with their families, and enjoy the new park. Just so everybody knows, the day before, which is a Friday, the Parks Department is going to be having their official opening, but our gathering is going to be 3 to 4 hours long, and it's going to be fun and meant to draw everybody out and to show everybody the new park in this side of town since school will be out. That is the sort of the synopsis of what we are planning for our general meeting. We just got some logistical things to take care of first, and we are hoping to have Southeast Bend Neighborhood Association join us as well. Okay. Any questions on that from either the board or from people?
What's
Nothing
the date
from the-
again? Say the date again, James, for the annual meeting.
Saturday, July 9th. And it's going to be a different kind of annual meeting. We are hoping to have possibly some speakers in attendance. We are going to be reaching out to city staff. We'd like tents and tables from nonprofits, but also the city to have maybe a table with, land use discussions. How does that work? If you have a complaint about a pothole, how does that work? We are looking for some city stuff there as well. But we're also hoping to have some Frisbees and weird things going on. Like I said, anybody that wants to assist us in that or in this, endeavor, please reach out if you've got any ideas for any groups that you represent. This will be the time.
I think we're also hoping to make this a kind of a recruitment and educational event to get people involved in the neighborhood associations. Were we going to speak with Larkspur as well?
Hopefully. So Susie says the official park opening. So the park opening is on Friday. We're hoping to do this on the Saturday right after that, Susie. Am I wrong on my dates? Can somebody double check me on the?
No, that's correct.
Yeah. Friday, July 8th is the scheduled grand opening of the Alpenglow Park. And then the day after, Saturday, July 9th, is when we're planning to have our event.
Yes. Okay, that is all. So now, Melanie, we've decided to allow you to speak and do whatever you want at every one of these meetings, to just give you some time. And they're always going to be in the beginning of the meetings in case you do have to blast out for city business. So now I am going to hand the non-existent microphone to you.
Sure, thanks. And you already have some stuff on your agenda that you're going to talk about later, that's sort of things that are going on recently and in your newsletter as well. One of the things happening lately is the Wilson roundabout has started construction. So there's a big detour around Wilson and 9th while that roundabout gets built. And then there'll be some continued construction on Wilson going west to 3rd. They're going to start with that section. So that's going to be worked on for a while. So people will experience that in the neighborhood. I think the big thing that I didn't see on your agenda already that's coming up to council this Wednesday is the library. So the library board has a plan to build a central library in the north part of Bend. They have brought forward basically brought a land use decision to council. So they purchased some property up in the Obie Riley area. Actually, I think before the vote on their bond. The bond passed, so they are now looking to issue the bond and start building the central library. They purchased about 12.5 acres of land up there, and that area is not yet annexed into the city. It's a expansion opportunity area, and similar to the southeast area, eventually the city would do an area plan there to sort of cohesively plan the whole area for development. But without that, the requirement up there is that you do a master plan if you want to get annexed into the city. And the library has chosen to, instead of doing the master plan and working with their neighboring property owners to do that, they've asked for an exception to be written into the text of our code. And so that's what we're going to be deliberating on and hearing about Wednesday. Not, can the library build a new library? Not, should the library put a library in the north part of Bend? Simply, should the library be allowed to have an exception to creating a master plan in this area that's not yet in our UGB? So it's kind of technical. We're getting a lot of feedback from people on both sides of the issue about it. And I'll say I obviously support our excellent library system. And so I'm going to just be narrowly focused on the sides of that argument on, is it appropriate to give them an exception or not at this point? So that I think will be the major topic at our meeting coming up this Wednesday. And I'm just pulling up the agenda here so I can see if there's anything else interesting.
Can I ask you a question about that, Melanie?
Yeah, go ahead.
Is there any danger? Are you guys concerned at all about setting a precedent for other development?
Yeah, I think that is part of the discussion on whether this is the right way to go. There already is an exception granted by a previous council for the school district to put an elementary school up there that was granted in the past. And so the library is pointing to that and saying, hey, you've done this before, why don't you do it again for us? And so it's going to be really interesting to kind of balance the public good of libraries, of course, versus the needs of having really good planning. And I do believe in, the idea of master planning and planning for a whole area so that you make sure you have the infrastructure you need, that you have connected communities, that they have all the different parts of a complete neighborhood that we want to see, especially when bringing stuff into the UGB. So I haven't made up my mind yet. I need to listen to everything and hear from everyone we're going to hear from on Wednesday, but that's exactly one of the things that people are bringing up to us. So.
Well, just so we know, and I know you don't know the entire specifics, what would happen if the city council did not approve The exception for a
Yeah.
government already approved countywide bond.
So if we don't approve the text amendment, they would need to go and do a master plan. And they would need to work with neighboring properties to do that. Or they could wait until the city creates an area plan. And as far as I know, and this will probably come up on Wednesday, I don't know what the timeline is for an Obie Riley area plan. And so that is part of, I think, why they are coming forward and saying we would like to do this now and we don't want to wait to do a master plan or to do this other thing or to wait for the city to area plan it. So it would not, a vote to say, no, you can't have a text amendment on Wednesday is not a vote to say you can't build a library here. You know, you can't build a central library, you have to build other libraries. It's simply to say this land use process that you've initiated, we think the standard has not been met to allow us to do that.
So either follow the rules or get an exception. Okay, everybody,
Yeah.
you might want to listen in on that meeting.
I'm sure there will be a big story in the paper about it afterwards as well. So the library board itself is sort of split, and so we're definitely getting input from both sides. The other thing I will mention is that during our work session on Wednesday, we are having a little bit of a work session about the climate friendly and equitable communities rules. And we'll be getting a presentation from our staff, so that might be interesting for anybody who's interested in those rules.
And that is going to be discussed after Melanie tonight. That's part of the governor meeting with NART.
Oh, cool. Great.
It's actually on our agenda, but unfortunately Jen isn't here, so we're gonna have to wing it.
Yeah, or get her to update you some other way. That's awesome. And I think, yeah, the other thing I see on our agenda is that we are approving or are being asked to approve the contract with Shepherd's House to actually start developing a navigation center at the 2nd Street shelter. So somewhere that people can be during the day. Right now, the 2nd Street shelter is an overnight shelter. It's meant to keep people out of the elements, you know, and be a basic overnight shelter for that purpose. But we are going to be moving towards creating it actually as a navigation center. So there's somewhere for people to be during the day where they can access services and other things that they need instead of just kind of being kicked out to wander around the city until they come back to sleep again there at night. So I think that's all I have for right now. And then I will, if this is going to be a standing agenda item, I'll make sure to get a list going for every meeting, and also happy to answer any questions anyone has.
I was just going to ask if the Planning Commission recommended language for the shelter codes, is that being introduced in your meeting?
Not this meeting. We're going to do a work session. This is my understanding right now, may change, but this is my understanding right now, is that we will do a work session at our first meeting in April. And then we're trying to create an actual special meeting just on the shelter code for council to hold a meeting and to hear public input at one meeting on that topic. And then have a final vote on it at the 2nd meeting in April. That's my understanding of the timeline right now. And I know there hasn't been an announcement yet about that special meeting, but I think that's being worked on.
Brian, Councilor Kabler, I will inform you now of something that we learned about right before this, or I learned about right before this meeting. The neighborhood associations are basically in the process of putting together a open house public forum in 3 parts. The initial plan, and this may change, is there will be a meeting at Summit High School, one at Bend High, and one at Mountain View High, possibly with Councilor Perkins being one of the board members in discussion, and they will be moderated by Hans Jurgensen, a longtime neighborhood association person, regarding the shelter code. This will all happen in the next few weeks before city council votes on it. We will send everybody information about this as either a specific email or part of our newsletter. It will most likely be a specific email because this is all time sensitive. So Melanie, if you haven't heard about it yet, that's because it's happening. The planning is going on as we speak, and that is all I know of it at this point. There is so yes, it's all about improving two-way communication between city staff, city council, and the people of Bend. And I would just like for people that are in the audience to know this topic has had the most two-way communication with the Planning Commission that I have experienced in the last 10 plus years of dealing with this sort of this sort of dialogue and topics. There's a lot of people that are interested in what's going on. There is a question in the chat, Melanie, you may be
Oh, I
able
didn't
to
see it.
answer it. It is the update on the northbound Broster House. I'm assuming that's the under the train tracks. If that,
Oh,
Sarah, is
yeah,
that
I
correct?
don't, that was supposed to be completed and I actually don't travel that route as much as I used to, so I haven't actually been by to see what's up with it, so I can try to find out. Cause I thought that was started quite a while ago to get that underpass done.
Nothing seems to be happening.
Okay.
Yeah, I know that it's a multi-pronged task. The MPO
Yeah.
and Robin Lewis at the city staffer, she's been sort of keeping me in the loop about it. They were digging down to do some sewer work, but then they're also expanding it for pedestrian access on one side. So yeah, Melanie, if you can get back to us, that would be great.
Yeah, I'll try to see if I get an update.
Any other questions for Councilor Keebler while we have her? Jenny?
Sorry, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Excuse me. Okay, I'm really shy, so sorry. With that, I was just wanted to get clarity there. Melanie, you're mentioning the work session of April 6th, then to review the planning code, the shelter codes, and then potentially the following week, is that the public hearing? Just so I could get clarity on the staging of that, and also when would these shelter codes be voted upon by the city council?
Yeah, so I think my understanding and the way it typically goes with planning commission when they pass these kind of large code packages to council, first we have a work session, which is in our first part of our meeting. There's no public comment, there's no vote, it's just discussion and workshopping. Maybe we say, hey, change this or that, bring this back to us. And then at the second council meeting in the month is when we would actually have it brought back to us on our business agenda and actually open a public hearing, take those comments, and do a vote. I think what we're talking about and what I expect to be announced hopefully soon is actually having a special meeting to hold that public hearing. So it's just a meeting on that. So we're not in the middle of the whole other council meeting. It's a special meeting that we notice just for that. People can come and comment. It will be part of the record. It will be a public hearing. We may deliberate and we may not reach a decision, sort of like planning commission deliberated, didn't reach a decision, set it to another meeting. That may be what happens at that special meeting. And then in that case, I anticipate our final vote would probably be the second meeting of council in April. And that's my understanding right now. The timelines could change depending on, if we can get everybody together to schedule that meeting, the special meeting. But I think that's what the expectation is at this point.
Okay, thank you for that.
I see a question
Briefly, we
too
have not
from Ann
discussed that.
Perry.
Who was that?
I see Ann asking about the Murphy Broster House
Development.
circle.
The gas station.
Yeah, I don't know anything about that, where that's at. Jen probably knows and she's not here, so.
It has not gone to the planning commission for review yet.
Has there been an application even submitted yet?
No, there,
Karen, you should know that.
no application yet.
Right.
Anything else directly for Councilor Keeber? No. Okay. So there are two items that I put into the chat links, and they have to do with our next topic. And that is, Jen had it labeled as the governor meeting with NART, but what it truly is, it's the climate friendly transportation zones and development that DLCD is having to consider, which city council and essentially city staff will have to respond to the state's request. There is open public comment period that expires March 31st, I believe. And they are also asking for a representative in our part of Oregon to sign up for the DLCD. And that is one of the applications that I put in the link. Karen, I'm going to need your assistance on this topic. This is a very complicated topic, and Melanie, please chime in if you can. I know at this point, you've probably seen even less of it than we have because I've been sitting through a bunch of the state meetings And most of the city councilors have been avoiding them so that they do not get distracted by false information. Essentially, it involves Executive Order 20004, which has to do with creating land planning in cities of Bend under the concept of climate-friendly complete communities is ultimately the concept. As of this point, the city staff has been reviewing it, but none of the councilors or planning commission have. There have been a lot of people in our city, neighborhood association specifically, that have been following this since it was initially released by the governor. And after that entrance, I'm going to say, Karen, speak on what you can.
I can add a little bit. When you look at the initial documents, I suspect that this all happened because the Republicans walked out and wouldn't talk about carbon exchange. The governor's ordered 20 agencies to come up with ways within their own jurisdiction to reduce greenhouse emissions. When you read the reports, it's kind of scary. Oregon's was supposed to reduce emissions to a certain point by 2024. In fact, our emissions have gone up. And so she feels it's an emergency she has to address. It's being done in terms of land use planning. Mike Walker is following it for, I think, a Southeast neighborhood for most of us. The proposed rules go into thousands of pages. And the chief concern is that it hasn't involved, at least in Mike's opinion, any developers, in the sense that, are these rules actually going to meet with market approval, or are they really going to happen? But they're very complicated. What they want to do, for example, is that every city would have 30% of its land dedicated to very, very high density, where there'd be walking and biking and such things encouraged. But it's hugely complicated, a very big project. And I'm leaving it to Mike, frankly, because I stopped understanding it about 4 months ago. That's all I can say.
And I just have to, so I've definitely read a little bit more. It's not 30% of a city. It's 30% of a specific zone in future.
I'm sorry.
In future residential development, multi-use development.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
And that is, yes, it is extremely long. I'm not saying that to discount anybody from looking into it. It is important. It will be, if it goes through and is followed through on by the cities, it will basically be a very big billboard screenshot of what cities are going to look like in Oregon for decades to come. Please reach out to any of us and attend some of the meetings. We will have them on our website. Dirk, I think we already have some information on there.
We do.
And it is very, very complicated. And the state is still looking for recommendations. It is not solidified in any way. And I know I've had some heated conversations about the topic. And the number one thing that I've discovered is that nobody really understands what the ask is from the state. So when the state's asking questions.
Yeah, I mean, some people have called it sort of land use 2.0. It's a big difference in how we plan and build our cities, and the impetus behind it is the climate emergency, right? So the areas that Karen sort of was talking about is it's asking cities to identify climate friendly areas where then you can put a lot of your housing needs and all of that other stuff into those areas. So identifying those areas of your city that can get taller, that can get denser, that can keep from pushing out into sprawl. And also it has things in there about like not overbuilding your roads, right? Not overbuilding our reliance on cars that are contributing to emissions, reducing the car travel in your cities by building denser and having all these things. So it is fairly sweeping. There was an editorial in the paper, I think it was today or this weekend, from Ben Gordon at Landwatch that I think gives some of the philosophical reasoning behind a lot of these rules, but they are quite extensive. And so we've been, I've been working with our lobbyists and our staff, and that's why we're getting a presentation from staff this Wednesday. And we continue to be in contact with DLCD and tell them, you know, hey, here's how this will affect us when you give us these rules. Someplace like Bend is actually pretty far ahead of the curve compared to some other cities on actually doing some of this stuff already. Like identifying our core area plan and already planning to densify and create that urban core of our city. So we should be able to comply with these rules, but you know, there's questions about making sure they're clear, making sure if they're not, we can go back and fix them, right? Making sure they're not overburdening our staff with a bunch of things that they can't do on a timeline they can't complete it within. So I think the takeaway for people is that this is a sweeping change in response to climate change, and it is going to change how cities are built. That's the intent. So seeing how it shakes out is going to be quite interesting, and seeing how cities are going to be able to actually implement it is the question that a lot of cities have right now. But I think we expect the rules, I mean, they're going to move forward and finalize these rules this spring. I don't think they'll delay any further, though they are still taking input. So if you do want to give input, now is the time to do it.
I'm just cruising through the chat. Susie, you have a question about Old Farm's position regarding the development, proposed commercial development at Murphy and Broster House. So the neighborhood association, one of the things we try to do regarding land use is explain everybody what's going on and keep them appraised of the entire process from before things occur all the way through the planning commission's concepts on it up until city council votes on it. We've been doing that with the gas station. The board itself has not taken an official position on it yet, because until it actually gets sent to the city and there is something to take an official position on, it is all it's basically unofficial. I mean, I know what's going on. Every one of our board members know what's being proposed for there. We all have our opinions on it. But from an official standpoint, Karen, give me 10 seconds. From an official standpoint, we have not chosen to pick a side, but it's very hard to pick a side when they haven't actually sent anything to the city to consider. Karen?
James is right. They had a pre-application submission where they meet with city staff, go over ideas, get ideas as to what would be allowed and what not. That has closed. Their next step is to submit a formal application. That'll be given a project number. And of course, we're going to be publishing that. And there is a group that has been formed called No Gas Station that is going to be soliciting funds and blanketing the area to oppose the gas station. But right now, we're just waiting for the application to come in. Nothing can be done until that happens.
So I believe it's Susie. I can't see who's asking the question. If Jen, who is not present tonight, has been following this and working with that group, and I know Karen has as well, and I know Southeast Bend Neighborhood Association is following and keeping up with this as well.
There's a question about not go to city council as a type 2 plan. I've been reviewing the code on administrative reviews. The director of planning has the discretion whether to make a type 2 application, which is your typical application for development, into a type 3, which will typically require a hearings officer. I believe, given the complexity of this, it involves a gas station. They're going to have a conditional use permit, which involves evidence and a lot of discretion. If the goes to a hearings officer and the hearings officer approves the application, the next step, I believe, will go to the city council. And at this point, we do not know what the planning director is going to do. If there's a hearing, of course, we'll be publishing that. We'll be publishing everything we can with respect to it. But right now, we're on hold.
I think I'll share one development that has happened is that the land has been purchased by Colvin Oil.
Mm.
And I believe they're doing an environmental study on that.
Yes.
So I don't know if that helps, Susie. And I do understand the frustration of everybody. like I said, we all have our personal opinions on it. At this point, as a board, we have to sort of follow it through the process. But I bet if you looked at that petition, there might be some of our signatures on it. So let's see here. What would it take for the Old Farm District to oppose the project officially? Well, officially, we have to fight. It has to be approved as a project, or it has to be. It has to become a project before we could take a position. Historically, when it comes to development, we don't necessarily oppose or support projects. We've watched them, and if they follow the rules and the law, we try to guide them to make it best for our area. And if the city council has to get a condition or sign off on a conditional use permit, and the majority of the people in our area don't think that's a good idea, then yes, we could possibly get behind that and provide testimony. But if it's following all the land use rules by the state of Oregon and by the city of Bend, even if we say no, that doesn't really mean much when the rules are already in place. And I definitely know that's not what you want to hear.
I think,
like I said-
Susie, to address some of your other comments, I think the best thing to do right now is to get plugged in to that organization that is opposing it. But until they submit an application, there's no official vehicle for anybody to oppose. Right now, the only thing they've done is by mandate of the city council and the planning commission, I think, is to have those public meetings to let the people know that they're considering this kind of development.
You all are, whoever is organizing, you're being organized the earliest I've ever seen somebody get organized in this process. So you will not be left out of this process. You are already so plugged in. And I'm just going to say, because it could come to council in an appeal or as a conditional use or whatever, I cannot weigh in. I can't prejudge it. I have to wait. Of course, I can come to your meetings and listen to what, I can come to these meetings. It's not going to bar me from that. But if anyone asks me, I can't make a decision until it comes in front of me.
And for those that don't know, Melanie actually lives in the old farm. So she is your neighbor. And she probably drives past that soon to be roundabout, or that roundabout, on a regular basis. So I'm going to, at this point, I think that's enough on the NERC conversation. I mean, we can possibly get Jen to follow up. Check our newsletter, check the website. Very briefly, Karen, can you very briefly talk about the Thornboro Resort? It is completely outside of Bend city limits, but it is part of Deschutes County, and it is a large enough project. We thought it was necessary to discuss because it does affect Central Oregon and land use planning, as well as the way Department of State's lands is addressing land use, which we just had 2 major sections of land brought into the urban growth boundary in the Old Farm District. Karen.
I've not been personally involved. Central Oregon Land Watch has been one of the opponents to this Thornburg Resort. Apparently it started in 2005. They want to put in golf courses, up to 1,000 homes. They're going to need 6,000 gallons of water a day, if I remember correctly. And they have not yet identified a source for it. They have been consistently opposed and disapproved. And so they've taken a new strategy. Instead of applying for the whole development at once, they've broken it down into pieces. I think the latest application was for a guardhouse and a clubhouse to be built. Of course, the clubhouse isn't any good with people living around it to go to it. Central Oregon Land Use thinks that this is kind of a sneaky way of trying to get around the codes. Right now, the county commissioners have approved the application with a lot of conditions. The question is whether there will be an appeal to to Land Use Board of Appeals, to LUBA. The best source, I think, to get a really good insight in this is the Central Oregon Land Watch website, because they have literally been in this fight for 15 years.
We also have published what I have on screen now. This is an article published by Land Watch that I then duplicated and put on our website. If you go to our website and look under more news, you'll find this article, and there are links in here to how you can get involved.
And the public hearing that was a few days ago is online. I attended it as a few hundred people did. I didn't hear, I think I heard one person that was for it. And this is, like I started this conversation with, this is beyond the city of Bend's capability, other than the taxpayers and residents here to have a say. But it's not something that the city council is going to vote on or city staff can assist with, but it is something that is residents of Central Oregon, we thought as a board, we needed to bring up and discuss.
There have been different figures thrown around as to how much water they could potentially use. The Land Watch article says up to 6 million gallons a day.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, they want to build like a lake or something, right? Like,
3 lakes, 3 golf
Great lakes.
courses.
yeah, I'll just elaborate on what Karen said. Landwatch has been fighting Thornburg for decades. And Karen, they are appealing the latest round of decision by county up to LUBA to try to, I mean, they have a lot of arguments about water use. And so now this other attempt at land grab, you might see Councilor Broadman's comments because he went in his individual capacity to this meeting. I agree with that. And the whole idea, we're talking about how we're trying to help preserve our open spaces and fight climate change, with all of our city policies and all these things coming down on cities from the state. And then over here, the county's doing golf courses in the middle of the desert, right? So definitely think Landwatch is, and I put a link to Landwatch's most recent update on this for anyone who's interested.
Perfect. I'll get that posted too.
If anybody has a specific question on that topic, please ask it now. Otherwise, we're going to move on. That'd be a no. So as everybody knows, there's proposed homeless shelter update or proposed homeless shelter code changes. Every neighborhood association has been actively involved in this discussion. We've been trying to not just answer questions, but guide people to the planning commission meetings, have them submit public comment. Land use 101 in this area is must get involved early on in the process so that all of these items become public comment period or public information, I guess. So everything that gets sent to the planning commission will also end up getting reviewed by the city council. As I stated at the beginning of the meeting, there's going to be 3 public forums that are in the process of logistically being handled. And I think the first one's going to be next week. Does anybody on the board have anything else?
As soon as you have that information, I can get it out in either a newsletter. If we can publish all 3 of those meeting times and locations, I'd like to do that as early as we can.
Yes, and we should have that in a couple days. Does anybody else on the board have anything to say about the shelter code at this point, or questions? There are 3 recorded planning commission meetings that have all already intently discussed it. But it sounds like the council is going to be holding a specific meeting for it. It is a big deal.
I'd like to just add a point that I think a lot of people have put in a lot of hard work to try and change some of that code. And we may not have gotten everything we had hoped for, but I think we should celebrate some wins because there have been some significant changes.
All righty. Okay. So we're going to add one item to the agenda. And that is we're going to be discussing our budget. We're going to do it at the end of this meeting. And that's also going to be some of the things that we're going to be determining for the general meeting. We're going to briefly discuss the Bend beautification cleanup. Our board's been working on it with some residents in the area. So if we can go into that briefly, Brian, why don't you take that conversation?
Sure, yeah. I am the board liaison for this program, and the Bend beautification program is basically litter and trash pickup along our streets and some other little fine points. We have invested in equipment, so we will have much of what we need to organize and run our own cleanups. Volunteer Diane Holmes is the actual coordinator of the program, so she and I work together to help get the information out. We have our first scheduled cleanup, and we will do monthly cleanups from April through October for weather reasons. And our first cleanup will be on Thursday, April 7, and we will start about 9 a.m. And the exact locations of the cleanup, we're working on those now, but need final approval from the city so that we're not conflicting with anything that's going on construction-wise or otherwise with other cleanup activities. So we'll have more information on that. We do have a survey, if you will, on our website. If you haven't already received that through email, I would encourage you to check it out on the website and to share it with fellow residents, where we basically are asking if you're willing to help and available to help on any one or any of the cleanups. And if so, what days might you be available? And we've collated the information that we have thus far, and that's how we came up with Thursday. Thursday was the most popular day for people to do that. So our plan is at this point to do the first Thursday of every month, April through October, and move around the district to hit different roads and to work with the city on the specific needs there. So if you would take that survey and share it, that would be immensely helpful. I think we're going to have a pretty good turnout for the first cleanup. And for those people who have already signed up and have been contacted, we will have further information about the specific details when we get a little bit closer. So far, so good. And are pleased to have this program back up and running again in the old farm. The more people who participate, obviously, the more area we can cover. We're expecting probably, 60 to 90 minutes probably per event. So it's not an undue burden to participate, and look forward to meeting some of your neighbors while doing something noticeably to improve our area. So again, check it out on the website. Thanks.
Excellent, Brian. And as we've discussed, our roads aren't necessarily that littered with garbage, but it is nice when there's none. So that way everybody can walk around and feel happy about where they live. Ross, did I see your hand?
I think he was clapping.
Was that a clap? Okay.
Yeah, we're just clapping.
Okay. But nothing like safe, clean streets to walk around on. So now just a real quick, for those of you that don't know, the neighborhood associations, one of the historic tasks has been sort of land use notification for what's going on in the city. The various neighborhood associations have chosen to deal with that differently over time. One of the things that Old Farm has done and has been doing for a long time now is keeping people as notified as we can about not just the minimum requirements of what city code requires. So depending on the project, it might be 250 feet, it might be 500 feet. We've been trying to notify people throughout the entire neighborhood association, which is essentially south of Reed Market to Knott Road, to Broster House, to Murphy, to 3rd Street. It's a pretty large area. And then any other neighboring association. So for instance, this gas station that's at Broster House and Murphy, we both get notified of that, and then we try to send that out. As development has occurred, some people oftentimes don't find out about a development until it's literally right next to them. And that is not the way it's meant to happen. So that is why we encourage everybody to at least go to our website, find out what's going on. We basically are now having a developer meeting about once a week. Karen, correct me if I'm wrong, that if we don't host, we basically participate in all over the southeast side of town. And that is only going to get more and more and more active as the development occurs, as the southeast area gets annexed in, as Stevens Tract gets annexed in. You are literally going to be seeing thousands of residential units and commercial buildings put into place. And we are going to do our best to make sure that you have all the notices from the pre-planning stage up until when the city council may or may not approve or planning commission discusses them. and it is very challenging. That is trying to be polite. So does anybody in the, Julie, I see you here. I've invited you, you asked to participate. Dirk,
Another
what do you?
thing, we have a question from Janet on another land use issue that's outside of the farm district, but she has a question as to whether or not we're working with other NAs or getting involved in that particular issue.
Janet, if you wouldn't mind unmuting and sort of asking a more specific question, it might be easier to address.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just wondering, I know, I think 2, if not 3 other NAs are working on trying to get more information and look at options to change that COID canal property that's between Brookswood and the river, where there's a canal trail right now, and Parks and Rec has a thin strip along the river. And so it's a little bit interesting, because I think that's one of the areas that's been identified for some housing and but also kind of a unique area on this side of the river for people who live in Old Farm to have a place to go that's not Rimrock Park and using Reed Market and Century. And so I had talked to them a little bit, probably 2 months ago, and said they were starting to reach out to other NAs and just didn't know if anybody on our board has heard from them. 2, if you're getting feedback from other people. I think they're really just starting to do some research and figure out what options there are and where the negotiations between Polish and the canal company are. There's some unique situations with that. So I just wanted to know what you've heard and where you're at.
Karen, why don't you take this and then I'll make a comment.
Initially, Debbie DeWeese, 2 years ago, heard that Polish Homes wanted to buy the COID property. Part of it is protected by an easement until 1934, but the rest, and I can't remember how many acres it is, they're looking at putting in 700 houses. And Brookwood, there's just at this point, the roads to handle that. The 3 concerned neighborhood associations are working together to decide, how they're going to oppose this and what is going to happen. But the matters are being very, very well coordinated. There's some talented people over there.
And Jen, our board member, say that again, Dirk.
I was just going to ask Karen for clarification. You mentioned that there was some of that land that was protected by an easement. You said until 1934. Did you mean 2034?
You see, I went back in the last century. 2034.
Okay.
Bachelor Village holds that easement. It's a view easement. And it runs until COID stops using the pump that they're using now. But of course, when the easement runs, someone's going to be buying that land. They would like to have a park. There's so much wildlife there. There's so many trails. So many people use it. To at least have part of it a park, I think is one of the things that the neighborhood associations there are working for. I don't think they're going to be able to stop everything, but to at least preserve some of it for the use of other people is a big deal for them.
So our board member, Jen, has been working with them, and you can reach out to us and we can connect you with her. She's sort of our resident environmentalist. She swings with a bat whenever she's upset. So, and she's trying to, she's very much into native plants, species, preserving tree canopy, as is Karen. I don't recognize the people online right now, but somebody else had asked us about the possible tree code. I know the NLA may or may not be taking that up. That's the Neighborhood Leadership Alliance. But Janet, I will say this much: the canal district has slightly less power than the railroads.
Yeah.
So from a legal standpoint, city council and city staff have to deal with that first. And the residents, I mean, over a century ago, they got basically godlike authority over land.
Mm-hmm.
And people didn't really think about how that would affect us in the long run. or they didn't care back then is probably what it really is. But yes, we are trying to work with that. I myself have been working for a decade to have the canals opened up as basically public easements to facilitate east-west safe pedestrian access and biking access. So that is something that we have been working towards. Julie, I see that you're on, and I'm asking you because we have been communicating, and I'm going to have you speak before we go into the budgeting, because budgeting is kind of boring and a bunch of people might sign off. If you wouldn't mind introducing yourself and please telling us what your concern is. And if you want to volunteer, we're all for it. But let's get to know you for a moment.
Great. Thank you so much for having me, James. Hello, everyone. My name is Julie Zolfo. I moved to Bend back in 2017. I have family here, but I've been living, I've been coming to Bend since 2010. I bought here in Stone Creek back in August 2020. I was one of the first houses to be built here. I had one of the single houses here. And up until Sunday, I say March 6th, my life here was pretty happy until I went to the mailbox and I saw that there was this petition for 96 apartments coming into Stone Creek. And I scratched my head and I didn't understand that. And so I kind of put out the petition out there for other people. And this momentum came up of other people just like me that felt very, there was a bait and switch in what we were sold, what this community was going to be versus what it's continuing to grow into. And after I posted something on Nextdoor, it actually got even more personal when the developer from Franklin Brothers actually private messaged me. And I won't share tonight what he shared with me, but that made me start wanting to swing with the bat. And I'm very concerned as to what is happening here. And I'd like to know who else is, I felt like a lot of people were very concerned about the volume of houses that were coming in between the 93 apartments, the 47 apartments over retail. No one has mentioned the new other multi-use spot here on my side in phase 3 that they just changed the plan to on March 8th before the meeting. So I'd like to know what's going on in there because that was quote, quote, supposed to be townhouses. So I'm here as a concerned resident. Jen said, get involved. I wrote to her, I shared with her my concern, and I said, I want to be involved however I can because this is important to me.
So Karen is our land use representative. She is tasked with reading all the boring, long things that developers send to the city, and then we try to send out. We try to send up sometimes opinions or concepts, whether or not they're following the rules or not following the rules. We are required to host or to be a part of the developer meetings. So to save some time, Stone Creek has been in the plan and the works for a very long time. It sort of got paused. And I understand your concerns. Karen can sort of briefly answer whatever questions, or she can personally answer any questions that you may have. I know there's another development on the other side of the creek that's going in. We try to put all of these land use notifications and information on the website. It is pretty much up to date. I believe Dirk has been doing a good job at that. We've got another update that Karen's going to fill out. And a lot of these happen, they're very time sensitive. So Karen, I'm going to hand this briefly to you. And Karen, as you know, even if things upset us, if they do follow the code, all we can do is report on them. So Karen, if you wouldn't mind briefly helping or answering some of Julie's concerns.
Yeah, the Stone Creek is a master plan. I think it was approved initially in 2015. The area at the end of Stone Creek Lane by the canal has always been marked multifamily. And if you look at the code, multifamily can mean really high density. I'm not familiar with any representations that the developers made to people buying the homes, but in terms of the city, concerning the application, they will look at whether the application conforms to all of the applicable codes. For example, multifamily, if the density is too high, that would be, wouldn't be approved because the code would be against it. I think the density, in fact, is within the multifamily range. But that's the only way to contest it, is whether or not the application conforms to the code.
And so Karen, I've done my research, and yes, indeed, on record in 2014, that's always been there. My concern, as well as everybody else, and even calling my realtor, it's never been, I moved here and I got a property in 2020, and I got a pamphlet that said it was townhomes, and I was told there was 400 buildings here. There's a big distinction between a townhome and a multi-use property. So my question is, the builder had a choice to put that correct word in the plan that he sold to us, and he didn't. And when you put in townhomes, that wouldn't even reach the density he had to get to. So I think the concern is not whether or not it was zoned correctly. I understand that now. My concern now is when I came here and I was told time and time and time again, these would be townhomes and there'd be 400 homes here. And I even pointed out the flyer that was still on Stone Creek's website as of the evening of March 7th. And when I woke up on the morning of March 8th, that plan was changed. And so something's not smelling wrong here.
Well, what you have is, I guess I'm a retired lawyer, I'm inactive with the bar, so I cannot give you any legal advice. But who gave you that pamphlet? In other words, who made the representation to you?
Franklin Brothers.
Hey, Karen, we're fortunate enough that we have a city councilor that is not necessarily restricted by some of the rules that
I also
we are
can't
as a
give legal
board.
advice.
You don't have to give
I can't.
legal advice, but you can give advice that we might not necessarily be able to give.
Karen explained it pretty well. If it complies with the code, it complies with the code. And I just wanted to point out that our median house price in Bend just shattered another record and is over $700,000 now. So we need more homes. And
Yeah,
that's
and
all
I would say too that the master plan defined 2 areas within Stone Creek as being multifamily, not multi-use, multifamily. It went on to further say that could be townhomes, apartments, anything that qualifies for multifamily.
Yeah, again, I get the plan said that. So me and about 115 people who signed the petition, I don't know who started it, but I'd like to know who started it because we're all feeling the same way. It was never disclosed. And so if the argument is I should have known and I should have went down to the city and checked, the building code, my question is, why wasn't that same map the one that all of us received? And that's the deceit. That feels like the false advertising, because I can't change what's happening. And I agree. I know we need what we need. I'm coming from a perspective of, I'm not an idiot. I'm a marketing professional. And I know the purpose, that there's an intention that the word townhomes was used versus multi-family. That's very intentional marketing language. And so that's where my concern, as well as other people who signed the petition. I mean, did you guys not start that petition? I thought this group probably started the petition.
We did
No.
not start that petition. As we were required to by city code, we sat in that meeting. I don't know if you recognize me there. Karen joined us later. Jen joined us. And we have to do that as part of the land use notification process. We didn't start that petition, and I can tell you this because I've been on this board since 2007 or 8. So none of that shocked me or surprised me or anything. And just so you know, the Stevens Track West is now in that exact same position in planning of where Stone Creek was in 2012. And I would really hate in 2030 for someone to buy a house in there and not know what is going to happen.
Or could happen.
Or could happen.
I mean, I think that's really, again, I was a happy resident here until Sunday, and I saw this happen, and it doesn't feel right. And so there's a disconnect between what was shared in the city. I'm not denying that. What I'm sharing is that over and over and over again, the representation, I even called my realtor to confirm with her. I said, did you ever know this? She said, no, it was never positioned that way to all the realtors who sold. She said she was over at DH Horton, the other side of Stone Creek, and they talked about that being townhomes. So, again, yes, I apologize, Karen.
Yeah, no, I understand exactly where you're coming from. Something similar happened, I think, around Aubrey Butte, when the developer wanted to build on a golf course, and they hired a lawyer, and they successfully fought it. I think you're at a point where you're going to need to hire a lawyer to take it further.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's kind of what well, again, not only from our residents, but from a very personal perspective as well. There's something wrong going on.
So Julie, I'm going to wrap up your concerns. We can assist you in the way we can assist you, but Stone Creek isn't finished being developed. There is a multi-use project that's going to go right across the street from the elementary school.
Yeah, that's where I live. Yeah, so I just one more things. I mean, maybe this is just me being naive, but when I go to a meeting that says they're going to show a proposed plan for 93 units, to me, it's like, oh, we're going to discuss it. No, this was actually drawn up years ago and you didn't propose it. You're actually like telling me you're going to build it. So I would like to maybe get ahead of the one that's going to be 4 blocks up the street for me, because I live on that side of where that other new multi-use is going to be.
So I definitely know that's on our website. I know Karen's been following that from the early stages. And I encourage Karen, if you can reach out to Julie, that would be great, and answer some of these land use questions.
I'll try.
And Julie, if you asked how you can be more understanding of what's going on, neighborhoods don't stop at the stop sign at the end of your street.
Right.
We're trying to do our best to keep everybody informed of what's happening in the whole area.
Yeah.
And I do encourage you to reach out to Karen. There are many ways you can continue this and actually become very active and keep not just the people that live right next door to you informed, but the people that live on the other side of the railroad.
Absolutely, absolutely. I've never had such fire in my belly to be like, I need to speak up. Whatever
So
that
Karen,
is, I need to speak up.
Karen put her email in the chat section.
Thank you, Karen.
And just so you know, most people end up as part of their neighborhood association due to a burning in some place.
Thank you, James. I appreciate it. Thank you.
So on that note, at this point, the board needs to discuss some boring stuff. If you want to stay listening, that is fine. It's going to be budgetary. It's only going to be about 5 or 10 minutes. I'm just giving everybody a heads up. Melanie, you do not need to take part in this if you've got child stuff to go do.
Yeah, bedtime. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Melanie, oh, she already gone. I was going to say, how do you like the new format? But so Brian, Dirk, Karen, Ross, this does not need to be a very in-depth conversation at this point. I still need to finalize with Parks, but sounds like the location's still available. Brian, you're the one who's been concerned about the budget. What do you propose?
Do we want to, sorry to interrupt, James, do we want to stop streaming at this point or continue on?
Yeah, we can do that.
We could, we can stop streaming. This is going to be very boring.